there floats a phantom on the slum's foul air, shaping, to eyes which have the gift of seeing, into the spectre of that loathly lair. Face it, for vain is fleeing. Red-handed, ruthless, furtive, unerect. 'Tis murderous crime, the Nemesis of Neglect. This disturbing image of a shrouded, bug-eyed, knife-wielding phantom drifting through the miasmic slums of London's East End is perhaps one of the most readily recognisable images associated with the Victorian coverage of the Jack the Ripper crimes, albeit the melodramatic verse that accompanies it is, I would venture, somewhat less well known. The spectre was sketched by illustrator and political cartoonist John Tenniel, whose work you may well be familiar with, as he was the illustrator for Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, as well as Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, published in 1865 and 1871, respectively. He was also a principal cartoonist for the satirical magazine Punch, and for over 50 years, from 1850 to his retirement in 1901, his weekly contributions to the journal, which could be both controversial and socially sensitive, delighted and shocked his audiences by holding their own looking glass up to the issues and the ills of 19th century society. In 1893, his years of public service were officially recognised when he achieved the distinction of being the first illustrator and cartoonist to receive a knighthood. His Nemesis of Neglect cartoon appeared in Punch on the 29th of September 1888, at a time when, in an attempt to comprehend the incomprehensible, many journalists and social commentators were beginning to view the unknown perpetrator of the Whitechapel murders as an inevitable outgrowth of the dreadful social conditions that were prevalent in the district where the crimes were occurring. The illustration was, in fact, inspired by a letter that had appeared in the Times on the 18th of September, which had been written by this man, the Reverend Sidney Godolphin Osborne, author, cleric and philanthropist, whose letters, always signed S.G.O., had been appearing in the paper on a regular basis since 1844. Osborne's letters on social, philanthropic and religious topics were often intended to provoke controversy, and his condemnation of social ills could be, to say the least, ferocious. Inevitably, his ire was aroused by the stories of East End poverty, vice, violence and drunkenness that were appearing in the daily press in the aftermath of the murders of Martha Tabram, Mary Nichols and Annie Chapman. He therefore took up his pen and aimed a stinging missive at the horrific conditions which had been allowed to develop unchecked in the district where the murders were occurring, and which, in his and many commentators' opinions, may well have given birth to a monster of the slums. Interestingly, his letter contained the suggestion that the murderer might well be a woman, one of the first mentions of a possible female perpetrator. His letter read, "Sir, the tilled garden is fast producing the crop sown. It is ripening. It affords ample evidence of the nature of the seed. Its fruit is just that which such seed under such tillage was certain to produce. However abhorrent in all cruel, filthy detail are the murders to which the public attention is now so painfully called, however hard it may be to believe that they could occur in any civilized community, the fact remains that they have been so committed. Whatever the theories to account for them, whether or no the perpetrators may be yet discovered, they have been the means of affording to us a warning it will be at our extreme peril to neglect. We have far too long been content to know that within a walk of palaces and mansions, where all that money can obtain secures whatever can contribute to make human life one of luxury and ease within homes, from infancy to old age, surrounded with all that can promote civilized life, there have existed tens of thousands of our fellow creatures begotten and reared in an atmosphere of godless brutality, a species of human sewage, the very drainage of the vilest production of ordinary vice. Such sewage ever on the increase, and in its increase forever developing fresh depths of degradation. What pen can describe, what mental power can realize the nature of the surroundings of child life under these conditions? Begotten amid all that is devoid of the commonest decency, reared in an atmosphere in which blasphemy and obscenity are the ordinary language, where all exists that can familiarize the child with scenes bestial. Thus reared in home life, it can scarcely itself walk or talk when first introduced to outside life, the street life, such as it is, where these tens of thousands have to dwell. It is already so far morally corrupted that it is hard to conceive that this in itself can be in any way repulsive to it. For to it the home has been a school in all things preparatory. It is the seedling thus transplanted to grow to adolescence as it grew from infancy. Be the growth that of male or female, so far as any one feature moral of sex obtains, there is no one distinguishing characteristic. As is the boy, so is the girl. What the one has witnessed and heard within the home has been objectively and orally familiar to the other. We may choose to ignore the fact, but there is not a shadow of doubt in the minds of those who have made this deprived race a study that of both sexes it may be said that they scarce have passed childhood before they fall into the grosser sins of that adult life which is their daily street example. We hear much of the sufferings of those who come under what is called the sweating system of employment, and we are told that it is the fierce competition in the labour field that has produced it. What about the competition in harlotry? What a text has been given us from which we may draw a sermon which should go home to every Christian heart in the evidence of that unfortunate who desired a bed to be kept for her, for she would go at once to earn the 8 pence. If the wages of sin have fallen so low, we have proof afforded us of the competition in this foul market. Can human nature find a greater depth of degradation? But further, where such competition thus exists, can we be surprised that in this bestial life the jealousies which surely will be begotten of it beget murders? Outrages of such a character, such as scarce the most heathen nation could find in its category of crime. And this in the metropolis of a land ever boastful of its Christian creed. We seem to have needed at last some home stroke to awaken us to the fact that we have at our very doors an element of danger, threatening consequences which may prove but too late that we have suffered with little attempt to arrest it, the growth of a large and increasing portion of our population to live, move, and have their being under a condition of things lending to the utter subversion of the very commonest principles of civilization, leading to the commission of crimes which hitherto would have been held to have been so abhorrent as to be inconceivable even where all ordinary crime had full sway. I am quite prepared to give all praise to the efforts of the very many excellent, pious, hard-working volunteers of both sexes who for years have quietly and earnestly devoted themselves to the work of Christian salvage amidst this wreckage of our common humanity. They will have their reward where alone they so devoutly seek it. But although they may here and there rescue a few of those wretched beings and bring them into the habits of civilized life, the masses to whom they owe their existence, the homes in which they were reared, remain untouched. And such as the homes are, so will from them filter forth into street life the same race of beings bred and reared in all that can make them ignorant of God, defiant of all law, revellers in the profligacy which taints the scenes where they congregate, with crimes which, however repulsive to the ordinary mind, are, in their own estimation, just the issues of the life they best enjoy. Just so long as the dwellings of this race continue in their present condition, their whole surroundings a sort of warren of foul alleys, garnished with the flaring lamps of the gin shops, and offering to all sorts of lodgers, for all conceivable wicked purposes, every possible accommodation to further brutalize, we shall have still to go on affecting astonishment that in such a state of things we have outbreaks from time to time of the horrors of the present day. All strange, sir, as it may appear to you and the generality of your readers, it is within the range of my belief that one or both of these Whitechapel murders may have been committed by female hands. There are details in both cases which fit in well with language for ever used where two of these unfortunates are in violent strife. There is far more jealousy, as is well known, between such women in regard to those with whom they cohabit than is the case with married people where one may suspect the other of sin against the marriage vow. As to the nature of their sex, forbidding belief that they could so act, how many of them are altogether unsexed, have no one element in character with female feeling. It is now many years ago, when writing in your columns on these guilt gardens, I had procured for me some specimens of the kind of printed matter circulated among this class. From the nature of much which is now open to readers of a very different class, I can well conjecture what manner of cheap reading is open to the poorest class in the present day. The first of these murders was, I have no doubt, served up after a fashion, with every horrible detail exaggerated, and may well have had the suggestive effect to produce others. I can only hope that at last we may awaken to the fact that, quite outside the political arena, which seems to absorb all our interest, there are causes at work close at hand which, undealt with, may develop into a form of danger far more serious than any political disturbance. Sewer gas will sometimes explode, but this work of hand can remedy. Where will be found the remedy when this moral sewage attains the full development of which these murders are a mere passing sample? S.G.O. Osborne's letter certainly had the desired effect of getting society at large to wake up to the social problem, and many newspapers reproduced it and applauded the sentiments he expressed. Punch could not let such an attack and the issues it raised pass without comment, and so John Tenniel was tasked with personifying the evils that Osborne's letter had highlighted. And as Tenniel got to work on the image, the editorial team set about devising a suitably melodramatic ballad to accompany it, and thus the Nemesis of Neglect was born. Readers were confronted with the menacing image when they opened their editions of Punch on the 29th of September 1888, and on the facing page they were able to read a slightly clumsily worded poem that had managed to achieve the impossible and was even more over the top than SGO's original missive of 10 days previous. The full poem read, "There is no light along those winding ways, other than lurid gleams like marsh fires fleeting. Thither the sunniest of summer days sends scarce one golden shaft of gladsome greeting. June noonday has no power upon its gloom more than the murky fog flare of December. A Stygian darkness seems its settled doom. Life, like a flickering ember, there smoulders dimly on in deathly wise, like sleep-dulled glitter in a serpent's eyes. Yet as that sullen, sinister, cold gleam at sight of prey to a fierce flame shall quicken, so the dull life that lurks in this dread scene, by the sharp goad of greed or hatred stricken, flares into hideous force and fierceness foul, swift as the snake to spring and strong to capture. Here the sole joys are those of the man-ghoul, thirst, thrill, and ravin rapture. Held Dante's circles such a dwelling place? Did primal sludge e'er harbour such a race? It is not Hades, nor that world of slime, where dragons tear and man-shaped monsters fought. Civilization's festering heart of crime is here, and here some loathly glimpse is caught of its barbaric beating, pulsing through fair limbs and flaunting garb wherewith 'tis hidden. Mere human sewage, true, O sage, most true, society's kitchen midden. But hither crowd the ills which are our bane, and thence in vilest shape creep forth again. Whence? Foulness filters here from honest homes, and thievish dens, town rookery, rural village. Vice to be nursed, to violence hither comes, nurture unnatural abhorrent tillage. What sin soever amidst luxury springs, here amidst poverty finds full fruition. There is no name for the unsexed foul things, plunged to their last perdition. In this dark malabulge, ours, which yet we build and populate, and then forget. It will not be forgotten, it will find a voice like the volcano, and will scatter such hideous wreck among us, deaf and blind, as all our sheltering shams shall rend and shatter. The den is dark, secluded, it may yield to Belial a haunt, to Mammon profit. But we shall reap the tillage of that field, in harvest meet for Tophet. Slum-farming knaves suck shameful wealth from sin, but a dread Nemesis abides therein. Dank roofs, dark entries, closely clustered walls, murder-inviting nooks, death-reeking gutters. A boding voice from your foul chaos calls, when will men heed the warning that it utters? There floats a phantom on the slum's foul air, shaping to eyes which have the gift of seeing into the spectre of that loathly lair. Face it, for vain is fleeing, red-handed, ruthless, furtive, unerect. 'Tis murderous crime, the Nemesis of Neglect.